Chapter 7. Danger Underwater. "What did that kid want?" Tom Faraday demanded. "Why did he bring you boys up here?" "He didn't want anything special," Jupiter told him, "and he didn't bring us up here. We came up to look at the cave." "Well, let me tell you, that Chris is no good," the guard said. "If nobody's actually caught him stealing anything yet, it's because he's too smart. Take my advice and stay away from him. Now come along. Jeff Morton is back and wants to do some diving with you." As they started down the trail, Tom's manner became more friendly. "I suppose you're hoping to find some treasure in that cave," he said. "Well, there isn't any and never was. What's left is scattered over the bottom of the bay. Once in a long while a piece turns up on a beach, but people have got tired of even hunting for it anymore. It happens so seldom." He chuckled. "When Davy Jones takes something, he doesn't often give it back. Did you know that he took $100,000 in good American cash only 10 years ago? Yes, sir. He took it and kept it. And because of that $100,000, my left arm got crippled, and I've been this way ever since, only able to do odd jobs." He moved his stiff left arm to show what he meant. The boys clamoured for the story, and Tom willingly obliged. "Well, boys," he said, "I used to be a guard on an armoured car for the Dollar Delivery Company. One of our jobs was to pick up cash from the local banks and take it to the big national bank in Melville. Never had any trouble, and didn't expect any. You see, we never followed the same route twice or went to the banks at exactly the same time. Just the same, one day—" What had happened was that one day, about 10 years before, they had stopped to pick up money from the bank in Fishingport. Then they had parked the armoured car to eat lunch. Naturally, it was tightly locked, and they sat where they could see it. However, as Tom and the driver left the restaurant, two men wearing Halloween masks had stepped out of an old sedan and shot the driver in the leg. Tom had lunged at the men, but they had smashed him over the head and shoulder with the barrel of the gun, knocking him unconscious. Then they had taken the keys of the armoured car from his pocket and driven off. But Chief of Police Nostigen, then a patrolman, had heard the shot and came running in time to fire at the two as they climbed into the stolen truck. He hit one of the robbers in the arm. The alarm went out promptly, of course, and all nearby roads were bottled up. At nightfall, the armoured car, blood-stained and empty, was found in an abandoned boathouse some miles away. It became apparent that the thieves had made their escape by water. During the night, a Coast Guard patrol boat sighted an old motorboat drifting helplessly in the bay. As they closed in on it, two men were seen to dump several bundles overboard. They sank immediately. When the Coast Guard boarded the boat, they found two men, Bill and Jim Ballinger, ready to give up. Their engine had broken down, and one of them, Jim, had a bullet wound in his arm. But not a scrap of money from the hold-up was found, then or later. "You see, boys," Tom Faraday said, "they just chucked it overboard. Same thing old One Ear did hundreds of years ago when he saw the British were going to catch him. It went to the bottom, sank in the mud, and no one could find it. Being paper money, it rotted away mighty fast." "Golly," Pete said, "that was quite an experience, Mr. Faraday. Did the Ballingers go to jail?" "Oh, sure," the guard replied. "With the bullet from Chief Nostigen's gun in Jim's arm, they never had a chance. They went up for 20 years, but it was reduced to 10 for good behaviour. They just got out a couple of weeks ago. I'd certainly like to pay them back for crippling my left wing, boys," Tom said fervently. "Haven't been much use since then. Just odd jobs for me. Well, here we are, and there's Mr. Crenshaw." Pete's father and Jeff Morton were on the pier, stowing some gear into the big motorboat. Mr. Crenshaw straightened as the boys came up. "Hi, boys," he said. "Jeff is ready to check you out on your skin diving. He's an expert diver, and we have the very latest equipment here. He'll explain everything." With that, Mr. Crenshaw left them, and the three boys climbed onto the broad, roomy motorboat. "Okay, fellows," Jeff said, "tell me what diving you've done." Pete described the lessons they had had at a local swimming pool at home. They had become very familiar with snorkeling and had been checked out by their instructor in scuba diving just before coming east. "So far so good," Jeff said with an encouraging grin. "Now let's see how much you know." He started the motor and ran the boat well out into the bay. Near a small yellow buoy, he dropped the anchor. "There's a wreck beneath us," he said. "No, it's not a treasure ship. Any old Spanish ship would long ago have disintegrated in these waters. This is a small yacht that went down in a storm several years ago. It lies in 25 feet of water, which means we can dive down to it without worrying about decompression problems." He inspected and approved their face masks and flippers. Then, from a well-stocked equipment locker, he got out tanks of air, hose connections, and weighted diving belts. "This is the latest equipment, and as nearly foolproof as it can be," he said. "We won't use wetsuits because the water here is nice and warm. Get into your trunks, Bob. You'll take the first test dive with me. Remember, we'll be using the buddy system at all times. Always 2 divers together." The boys got into their swimming trunks and Bob carefully put on the equipment Jeff handed him. Last of all, he buckled on the weighted belt that would come off if he had to make a fast ascent. Jeff inspected him critically, nodded his approval, and got ready to go over the side. Bob followed using the special steps. In the water, Bob kicked his flippered feet and shot downwards. He liked swimming. Over the years he had done a lot of it to build up strength in the leg he had broken as a small boy. Now, able to go down like a fish and breathe without difficulty, he felt wonderfully light and free, part of a new universe. Below him a dark shape loomed up. It was the sunken yacht, and with Jeff at his side he swam slowly towards it. The yacht lay on its side, a gaping hole near the bow. As they got closer, Bob could see that it was covered with seaweed. Small fish swam around it in swarms. Jeff swam ahead. Using only his flippers to propel him, as he had been taught, Bob followed. Jeff swooned gracefully over the stern of the sunken yacht. As Bob started to follow, his attention was caught by 2 large lobsters retreating beneath the stern. He swam closer to the sunken vessel. Suddenly he was jerked to a stop. Something had him firmly by his right ankle.